Good morning. The House will come to order. All those in the galleries in the chamber, please rise, and we'll begin our day with a prayer by Monsignor Kerwicki.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let us bow our heads and pray. Bless us this day, our mighty God, with a fresh realization of your presence, and strengthen us to face our tasks with freedom's holy light. As we meet this morning in the people's house, guide our lives that we may be granted with your graces in the struggle to always choose what is good and right. Grant us wisdom, grant us courage, that we do not fail you or our citizens. Help us to keep our minds clear, our hearts clean, our spirits confident. May we live so honestly and so hopefully that no political disputes may discourage us, no failure cause us to fear, and no falsehood make us liars to ourselves, to others, or to you in this land of the noble free. And the House says, Amen. Amen.
Please remain standing and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the approval of the House Journal for the 23rd day, Tuesday, February 14, 2023, and ask for a roll call vote.
The gentleman from Jackson has moved for the approval for the House Journal for the 23rd day, Tuesday, February the 14th, 2023, and it was requested a roll call vote. Are there any additions or subtractions to the Journal? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the Journal will vote yes. Those opposed, no. Mr. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. Has everybody voted? Has everybody voted? Mr. Clerk, please close the board and tally the vote. By your vote of 119 yea, 0 nay, and 3 present, you've approved the Journal for the 23rd day, February the 14th. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the approval of the House Journal for the 24th day, Wednesday, February 15th, 2023.
The gentleman from Jackson has moved for the approval of the House Journal for the 24th day, Wednesday, February the 15th, 2023. Are there any additions or subtractions to the Journal? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the Journal will signify by saying aye, and those opposed, no. And the ayes have it. You've approved the Journal. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be introduction of special guests.
Introduction of special guests. Gentleman from Callaway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make an introduction of some special guests here at the Capitol with us today. Oh, excuse me.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
To your right and my left, between the fourth and fifth columns, we have the leadership of Callaway County class of 2023 here for their legislative day. In the class is Clay Carroll of Callaway Electric Co-op, Sandra Kolauer of Callaway County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, Brianna Cleathermos of the Callaway Chamber of Commerce, Russell Singh, Fulton Fire Department, Danielle Ubinger of the Callaway Electric Co-op, and Ashley Varner of Hitachi Energy. I'd like everyone to give them a warm welcome. Thank you.
Gentleman from Osage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Announcements, please.
Please proceed.
Introduction, sorry. We are in a season of champions, and everybody likes champions. And in the upper gallery on my right, on your left, are the St. Elizabeth Hornets. They are the four-time state champion Class 1A baseball. Thank you guys for coming. For everybody, give them a warm welcome.
Congratulations, champions. Gentleman from Christian.
Thank you, Speaker. Introduction of guest.
Please proceed.
Up here in the rear of the gallery, I would like to introduce Andrew and Terry Lauer, not only a good friend of mine, but also the legislative chair for the 140th District from the Christian County Republican Central Committee. They broke away and decided to come down and check us out, see what we're all about here, and see how we work. So if I would give them a welcome, I'd appreciate it.
Lady from Dunklin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Introduction of special guest.
Please proceed.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, today, to your right and my left, between the fourth and fifth columns, I'd like to introduce Greg and Tammy Gibson. Greg is a cotton and watermelon farmer in Zenith, and Miss Tammy is the Dunklin County Republican Committee chairperson. I'd ask the body to give them a warm welcome.
Further introductions. Gentleman from St. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Introduction of special guests.
Please proceed.
Thank you, sir. Between the second and the third columns on your right, my left, we have another champion. We have Mason Kemper. He is a middle school student at Blair Oaks here in Jefferson City. And he is here to visit the Capitol, tour the Capitol with his parents, John and Sarah, and his grandmother, Buffy, who many of us know who stay at the Capitol Hotel, takes very good care of us. And we'd ask that he be made a page for the day without remuneration, and I'd ask the chamber to give him a warm welcome.
Young man, you'll be made page for the day without compensation. Welcome to the Capitol. Gentleman from Clay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Introduction of special guest.
Please proceed.
All right, to your right, my left, between the first and second columns, is the princess of the 8th House District, Rose Hurlburt, who's visiting the Capitol after turning 7 yesterday. So I just ask that the body give her a warm welcome, and if you would make her a page of the day without remuneration.
Happy birthday, Rose. Your page for the day without compensation, and welcome to the Capitol. Further introductions. Seeing none, gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be points of personal privilege. I ask you to recognize the gentleman from Clay, District 16, for a point of personal privilege.
Gentleman from Clay.
Point of personal privilege, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed, sir.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday in Kansas City was a day of immense celebration. Unfortunately, also yesterday in Kansas City, there was a horrific tragedy as well. Two members of the Kansas City Police Department lost their lives yesterday in a traffic accident late yesterday afternoon. They were traveling. They were hit by another vehicle. The officer was a canine officer. Unfortunately, he was killed, as was his canine. Also, a pedestrian was killed in the accident as well. I'm short on details at this time, but, Mr. Speaker, I would appreciate if this body would keep these individuals in their thoughts, and if we could have a moment of silence, Mr. Speaker, it would be greatly appreciated.
Would everyone in the chamber and the galleries please rise and observe a moment of silence for the Kansas City Police? Thank you. Gentleman from Jackson.
Mr. Speaker, next order of business will be first reading of House bills and joint resolutions.
Mr. Clerk, would you please read the House bills and House joint resolutions?
House Bill number 1174, introduced by Amato, an act relating to the Line of Duty Compensation Act. House Bill number 1175, introduced by Krista Finelli, an act relating to powers of the state auditor. And House Bill number 1176, introduced by Perkins, an act relating to the offenses of trafficking drugs with penalty provisions.
Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be House bills for third read. And I ask you to recognize the distinguished gentleman from St. Louis for a motion on House Committee substitute for House Bill 184.
Gentleman from St. Louis.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I move that House Committee substitute for House Bill 184 be third read and passed.
The gentleman from St. Louis County has moved for the third reading and passage of House Committee substitute to House Bill 184. Gentleman from St. Louis.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we had a great debate on this on Wednesday, and if there's no other questions, I know a lot of people want to get home. I renew my motion.
Gentleman from St. Louis County has renewed his motion for the third reading and passage to House Committee substitute to House Bill 184. Is there any discussion? Gentleman from St. Louis.
To speak on the bill.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I think we've talked about this bill a few years in a row. I have generally come down on this side opposing it. Since I didn't speak the other day, I wanted to express why before I vote no. I do understand the sentiment behind this bill. In a situation where a county goes to a far place that might cost a business a lot of money, I get that being a problem and something that on a local level I'd likely vote against. But this particular bill is written in a very broad way that covers any such ordinance, regardless of who specifically it applies to. It actually, we didn't talk a lot the other day, I don't believe, but it actually would get rid of an ordinance in St. Louis City, not just the St. Louis County one that motivated this, but in St. Louis City that really hasn't gotten pushback, that folks have been pretty happy with. And that's where there are situations in which a local government may want to require certain things be done on new builds or on zoning changes. And that is the purview of local government. We do that all the time. The bill sponsor made it sound like this is an egregiously out-of-place thing that local governments aren't supposed to do. But we have ADA requirements, even on a national level and on a local level, that are about accessibility for projects. We've got historic codes that are about things that we just want to be certain materials to fit in with a community. If a local community decides that one of the things they want to press forward with is that new projects include charging stations, whether you or I disagree with that, if the community wants that, they should be able to say that. Now, I also think this ties hands as we go forward into the future with things that we might not even foresee. As the process of charging stations evolves, as our plans change for how to approach charging in communities that maybe don't have garages, maybe don't have private driveways where they can put in their own chargers. Municipalities are going to have to get creative. Counties are going to have to get creative in how they support these, how they require them in some cases. And I want to leave room for that. Another example here is this bill doesn't actually even prevent a municipality from requiring a gas station, a future gas station, to include charging stations. Well, they've got all kinds of other requirements they can put on these entities. Why should that one not be one that they're allowed? But I also just think this is a dangerous road to go down of preventing local control about things like zoning and building permits. And I don't think that's something we should do. Now, I did also want to point out that in this particular bill, I do have some questions about the actual wording of it and whether it actually even does what we're all describing and what the bill sponsor described. You know, this bill says that no local county may require a business owner to put in charging stations. Okay, well, as of right now, I don't know that anyone's actually requiring anybody to put in charging stations. They're saying if you're going to get a zoning variance, if you're going to get a building permit for new building projects, if you're going to redevelop or build a garage or a parking lot in these various contexts, then that project has to include charging stations. But nobody is required to go through that project. They can keep their property as is. So I think it's a fair question whether this actually prevents them from making it simply a requirement within a project proposal that needs government approval. I'm not sure if folks are following what I'm saying because it's kind of a legal technicality, but this is a law we're talking about passing here. And if in fact it doesn't prevent it from being a requirement in a request for a variance, in a request for a permit, then I'm not sure it stops any of this stuff from happening. Because I don't think anyone could go in and say, hey, business owner, homeowner, your building that already exists, you have to put in a charging station now. I don't think anyone's trying to do that, and I doubt they could, to be honest. But if they say, if you want to build this other thing that isn't currently allowed without our permission, it has to include this as a piece of it, as an element of it, just like we say we've got building codes and electrical codes, we have to meet certain modern standards. If they say one of those standards is it has to be capable of providing charging stations, well, I don't think this stops them from doing that. So, thought I should point that out for the record. I will say even if it did do that, I would actually be more opposed to the bill because I think that we need to leave a little bit of latitude for local governments to do what local governments do and for local communities to make those decisions themselves and not coming in as a state with a one-size-fits-all blanket ban that doesn't take into account what the future might look like or nuanced decisions that may need to be made along the way. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion, gentleman from St. Louis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak briefly on the bill.
Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I actually deeply share the concerns of my other colleague from St. Louis County, but I don't think that this is an approach that we want to take on this particular issue. I believe in our system. I love our government from local on up to the federal. And yeah, it's clunky and all those sorts of things, but in truth, who am I to sit in this room and make a decision for a county government that doesn't hold true for all county governments because I don't like something? What I need to do is go and run for county council, or what I need to do is elect someone else to county council, because that is the government that actually has jurisdiction in this particular matter. And while I share my colleagues' concerns, because of the frame of this particular bill, I'm going to have to vote no. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion, gentleman from St. Louis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak on the bill.
Please proceed.
I just wanted to clarify something from yesterday. I was asking about inspections on asbestos, on tar shingles, and refrigerants, and also lead pipes, that the government would say that you can no longer use lead pipes, and the gentleman who's offering this bill was basically making it seem that every small business in St. Louis County, which is what this bill is focused on, would have to automatically put these EV stations in, and that's actually not true. That's not what the St. Louis County ordinance says. And so that to me was not a genuine argument whatsoever. This is only for, like the gentleman from the Meredith District said, new businesses, new developments, and I think that's very important. Last night, I went to the Tech and Innovation Caucus, and I learned that they were using $1.2 billion in broadband from the federal government to get broadband all across this great state with fiber optics. And I'm happy about that. I want everybody in rural Missouri to have broadband because we're using these infrastructure monies, right? That's why we have them. But I want everybody that lives in rural Missouri that's looking to get to this broadband to also understand that other communities like St. Louis City, St. Louis County, Kansas City also deserve some of those ARPA funds. And the biggest reason you should vote against this is because it's taking away local control. I encourage you to vote no. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion? Seeing none, gentleman from St. Louis County, recognized close.
Mr. Speaker, interesting twists of fact, but anytime you change the occupancy of a building or use of a building without making any improvement and requiring that new occupant to install these is an unfunded mandate. And I get the political reasons that the gentleman stood up, and I applaud him for being very creative in his argument, but I don't buy it. I close.
The gentleman from St. Louis County has renewed his motion for the third reading and passage of House Committee Substitute to House Bill 184. All those in favor will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no. Mr. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. Has everybody voted? Mr. Clerk, please close the board and tally the vote. By your vote of 105 yea, 36 nay, you have third read and passed House Committee Substitute to House Bill 184. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be announcements.
Announcements. Seeing none, gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With no other business before the body, I ask that the House stand adjourned. On Tuesday, February 21st, we will take up House Committee Substitute for House Bill 729 and 640. We will also debate House Committee Substitute for House Bill 417 on perfection. And with no other business before the body, I ask that the House stand adjourned until 4 p.m. Tuesday, February 21st, 2023.
The gentleman from Jackson has moved that the House stand adjourned until 4 p.m. Tuesday, February the 21st, 2023. All those in favor will signify by saying aye, and those opposed no. And the ayes have it. The House is adjourned.